Does have a draw to his name, so this is a pair down. Which does mean for John, he does need another win to make day 2.
Mm-hmm.
Breeding Pool, Mox Opal. It's a tapped pool. Now, there are no Gilded Gooses in Cuvelier's deck. Differences here is that he plays copies of 4 Paradoxical Outcome, 3 Mox Amber, and then cards like Everflowing Chalice as well.
Right, and he has things like Psy, Master Thopterus, Mirran Besieged, these things that are going to actually generate a bunch of tokens that are going to make him better against Planeswalkers.
For Edgar, we have a turn 1 Emery. John, of course, playing the card as well. His looks like it's going to be on turn 2.
Maybe a little basic, but worse than on turn 1.
Yeah, Prismatic Vista here. We see, looks like 2 copies of Paradoxical Outcome and 2 Emerys in John's hand. That's actually pretty weak. I'd love to find something else to do.
Ooh, that Pyrite Spellbound can be a hot one here when you just have 2 Emerys facing down one another.
Yeah, I like that. See, plenty of artifacts to mill over. Pithing Needle, Pirate Spellbomb, Arkham's Astrolabe. But Edgar, with the ability to break serve here, go back to his turn. If he can maybe make a turn to Oko, do something that gets John's Emery off the table, I think it puts Edgar in a good spot.
Right, that's really what he's looking to do here, because this Pyrite Spellbomb is either going to draw Cuvelier towards more interaction, or just be a thing to turn off one of Magalhaes' card advantage engines here.
Emery gets back Witching Well for Edgar.
Well, there's that Oko on top of the library, but it is a turn too late in this case.
Yeah, I don't think he has a way to draw it. You know, nothing like Chromatic Star. Bauble would draw it just a little too late. He does have one Aether Spellbomb in the deck, which if he can find something like a Mox Opal, that would work too. If this doesn't happen, how bad is it for Edgar if John gets to untap?
A lot of it's going to come down with the rest, down to the rest of what Edgar's hand looks like. It looks like there's another Emery hiding out in his hand, and if he can answer the source of the Pyrite Spellbombs being recurred in Emery, then he's actually in okay shape.
From John, we see he'll get the untap. Starts with Arkham's Astrolabe. He isn't even at Metalcraft yet. Looks like he picked up a Mox Opal. Actually, maybe an Engineered Explosives, which in the case, that would be great here. It gives him that 3rd Metalcraft artifact. It means he'd have to play it on 0, but maybe that's fine. And Watery Grave, he might give Edgar another turn. Yeah, it just passes. Yeah. We have Engineered Explosives and Mox Opal in John's hand. But neither of them particularly good here.
I'm just glad we both get to be right about what's in the hand here.
So back to Edgar we go. It's going to be Gilded Goose. That's off Arkham's Astrolabe. Brings a food token along with it. And this is actually, I feel like we've seen so many games right now where players are just Mox Opals, Okos, everything really fast. This start on both sides seems really tame.
Yeah, there may be a point where we see John trying to be a little bit more resilient to some disruption with a lot more payoff cards in his hand, assuming that he'll just be able to find air off the top of his library. And on the other side of things, it feels like Edgar is just missing a specific piece here that he's digging for.
You're just like, yeah, I'm waiting for Edgar to find an Urza, maybe. Something like that that just blows this board up. Back to John we go. Emery targets Pyrite Spellbomb. If he can find, he can filter through to red mana, shoot down the Emery, but this is also fair.
This is, I won't say it's powerful magic.
No. On John's side, if he finds an Urza, these two paradoxical outcomes in hand are just going to, everything will go crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Here's Engineered Explosives on 0.
Is it outcome time?
It might be. Well, he doesn't have a mana yet for it. Maybe he does. Mox Opal, Legend to rule away the Mox Opal. And it is paradoxical outcome. How many cards? Let's see.
All of them?
You pick up the Emery here too?
I imagine that Emery is close to free as long as you find another 0 mana artifact because you have this Mox Opal. So I might get a bit greedy here and go for the full value.
He goes for everything but. Does find an Urza. Looks like Urza, a land, another outcome, and another land. So powerful stuff, but it's not quite there.
I would not call this powerful stuff.
Yeah, well, the Urza will be good. If he can make it to next turn, the Urza does do most of what he needs.
That's true. And there's even a point where he's thinking about not playing out this Mox Opal in order to discard just to protect it from an Oko.
He will play the Mox Opal. Does he play EE on 0? Looks like yes. And extra Emery, gonna go discard hand size, and looks like he gets to keep everything else. Emery into land, go away. Which will bring us back to Edgar, and you look at the front of Edgar's hand. He has his own Urza.
All right, time for a big turn, Edgar. Let's see it.
Mox Opal picked up here.
That's a big
this
draw.
Feels like a big turn. Now, Edgar's turns need to be bigger, however, because when Edgar's big turns oftentimes involve him making value, John's big turns involve drawing the entire deck and winning the game.
Right, that's kind of the thing that is the big difference here, is it feels like Edgar's doing something more in the middle, whereas John is literally trying to win the game.
Now, cards like Gilded Goose and Oko are really powerful, but in this matchup, less so.
Right, it doesn't matter if you gain a bunch of life and put a bunch of permanents into play if your opponent has a card that just says you win the game on it.
Yeah. I do like that Edgar has Engineered Explosives on 0 here. That's a good way to protect himself against a combo.
Correct.
Four mana, looks like it's going to be Urza. That will be the play. Construct comes in. With that on the stack, pop Engineered Explosives. I love this from Edgar. Keeps the board clear. Those zeros are the most important cards in play right now.
This is an incredibly heads-up sequence from Edgar.
Makes his own Mox Opal. Right, because John's hand is full of Urzas and paradoxical outcomes, but if all his artifacts cost mana, that's just slow.
That's true. You can't really be dedicating it turns to just drawing a handful of cards as we get to the mid and late portions of the game.
Another Goose from Edgar. Now John will get to rebuild a bit. He has his own Emery in play. But you see Edgar, well, prioritizes Bauble. I was wondering whether he was going to put the Engineered Explosives back into play.
Oh, one from hand's fine.
All right. That makes sense. That's why we didn't. And yeah, because we have the Astrolabe and the Bauble up. There's the mana available to pop that EE on command. Just really good sequencing from Edgar. Which means we go back to John here. He's got his own Urza. Looks like he's interested in it.
You're not going to do anything more powerful than Urza.
Right. But as long as John's not outcoming. Then the decks are doing the same thing. And if the decks are doing the same thing, Edgar is so far ahead.
Right, and one of the things here that Imri's really going to show is just how strong it is to be able to recur things like Mox Opal.
With enters the battlefield trigger on the stack. We see, it looks like an Aperture spin from Edgar. 5 mana. Could also be a Whir of Invention.
It could be with Urza on the stack as well to try and spike a counterspell.
I think that's what's going on here. With Urza on the stack, he's going to Aperture. Looking at his main deck, he does have 2 copies of Metallic Rebuke that he could hit here and 3 Cryptic Commands. That's the same list as Berterioni.
Mm-hmm.
And Aether Spellbomb's the find.
That's not a bad hit.
Yeah. A good card, though. The card's going to remain in exile, I believe, permanently, because though you can activate Urza at any time, that doesn't give you permission to cast the spell at any time.
Right. It ends up in an awkward spot where maybe he should have thought about doing it on his turn, or he wanted to see how John was actually going to spend his mana.
So, Edgar tapped out. John now has free reign.
Could always look at something like target a Mox Opal with Imri, tap the construct for Pyrite Spellbomb, then tap the Spellbomb to try and turn off the opponent's Imri, or just turn off Urza's if you think that you're that far ahead.
It's going to Pithing Needle. You can Needle Urza. That won't stop the mana. It will stop the Aperture.
Right, and this is a spot where if John just thinks he has better card advantage, then he's going to be able to pull out ahead here.
Looks like he's going a slightly different route. That Pithing Needle name's Engineered Explosives.
Okay, so what John's looking at doing here is instead cutting off Edgar's mode of interaction.
Right. This means John will get to build his way toward a big paradoxical outcome. Kind of puts pressure on Edgar to find something like Oko to take care of the needle.
Right.
Astrolabe from Edgar, going back to his turn. Some pressure on Edgar. Does he, how he wants to win? You know, does he attack? Does he spin Aperture a bunch? He lines it up. There's 5 mana up at the top, 3 more below that. It is 2 activations a turn.
More than likely, he needs to try to find one of his unfair avenues to winning. The big reason for that is chip damage is going to be difficult to get through when John's able to produce a bunch of tokens with something like Mirran Besieged, Saheeli, etc. And then on top of that, it's pretty easy to get the opponent down to, say, 1 or 2, only to have them win the game on the spot. The chip damage just ends up not being as relevant.
So rather than Aperturing, Edgar spends his first mana to pop Witching Well. That draws 2 cards.
Just looking for something like Oko here to try and answer the Urza.
Sai's going to bring back the Witching Well. Or Emry will bring back the Witching Well. Both cards to the bottom.
This is so much card selection this turn.
Do you have what is the target? What are we going for?
It's anything that will interact with this Urza. You want to try to create a situation where you have card advantage engines and your opponent does not.
Feels like on top of the list, you know, is Oko.
Yep.
Still plenty of mana available for Edgar, thanks to Urza. And remember, those Gilded Gooses also can sacrifice a food token. So another draw 2 off the well. Finds Cryptic Command.
That's a hot one here.
It's good. Let's count, though. Right now, he looks like he is 1 mana short. He can tap the Construct, the Bauble, the Goose. Okay, and now an island. He does have Cryptic Command up. It's going to be Arkham's Astrolabe, so still has Cryptic Command up. EE on 0. That's on Pithing Needle, but it does make mana.
Call that the Mox Sapphire.
And the construct swings in, and we finally get a count on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, it looks like. That will hit hard. And that might just be the plan, right? You hold up Cryptic Command, something like counter tap.
That'd
might
be
just be, and then try to win.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be huge here.
Yeah, not the usual avenue to victory, but with that hit of 9, I think it's possible. Yeah, John down to 9, so the construct is lethal. And I wonder how much this is on John's radar. He hasn't seen a Cryptic Command yet. And, you know, other than this Edgar's build, the one that him and Bertarioni are running, I haven't seen Cryptic Command in any of these other Urza lists.
Right. It really just kind of looks like you're playing Gilded Goose in a traditional Urza deck or Urza deck.
Right. Because of that tap team mode, it feels like he can just let things like this Saheeli resolve.
Right. He also has another option of on instep saying bounce Saheeli Rai, tap your team.
Yeah, something really powerful there. So we'll see if he's committed to that plan. Saheeli's cast, does Edgar care? He has to think, what could go in the way of this plan of winning next turn?
So Saheeli does represent a ton of mana, depending on what John's hand looks like, because each of those servos is going to be worth mana on the back of Urza. And there's also a point where you can use Saheeli to have that become a copy, the new servo that has become a copy of another artifact on the battlefield, or a creature.
Yeah, the mana being the problem. That looks like it will draw the Cryptic Command. Counter, and bounce Mystic Sanctuary.
Ooh. I have a feeling that that is going to get back a Cryptic Command.
Right. Yeah, that 1-2 punch, we've seen that. In most blue decks in Modern now have incorporated that.
That's big.
Saheeli's down. And we have Mirran Besieged. John's got to be careful. It's just one card draw away, and Edgar has that Cryptic Command. He can put it on top of the deck, draw it, tap the team, attack for lethal. It is still close. Here's Mox Opal. Mir comes along.
And the Cryptic Command coming back is public information.
Right.
So John knows to play around that. He likely just thinks that this is the turn. He has to win now, or it's just not going to happen.
So 4 mana, paradoxical outcome. That is a start. How much does he bounce?
It feels like he can afford to bounce 3 things, maybe 4. Does
Emery's fine
Edgar
to
have the
bounce.
ability to engineered explosives?
Just go. I only see Goose as a mana source.
Yeah, it looks like he is a mana short, so it is safe to bounce the Pithing Needle here.
Right. That was the needle on explosives. And some good news for John. Picked up Mox Amber.
Oof.
So now we get Opal. He might have done it. Opal gets a Mir. Amber makes a Mir. He's just generating mana off these outcomes. This is the combo element of the deck. Amber makes Spellbomb. All these cards are free thanks to Mirran Besieged.
Right.
I'm starting to think John's done it.
Yeah, it's possible. Here, he still needs to find something else, but he does have another outcome waiting in the wings. And also, there comes a point where he's just going to be able to spin the Urza wheel.
All right, so once he starts drawing the deck, then what is the win here?
Mirran Besieged, you reset it on Phyrexian.
Okay.
And then just win by having 15 artifacts in your graveyard after you've sacrificed a bunch of artifacts and replayed something like Imri over and over and so on.
Needle's back on engineered explosives, but again, not sure how long that's going to stay on the board. There's at least one more paradoxical outcome in John's hand. Yeah, all you have to do is get 15 artifacts in your graveyard at the end of the turn.
And it's looking pretty likely that's going to happen, especially when he has the ability to just sacrifice things like Pyrite Spellbomb.
All right, here is the paradoxical outcome again. So, remember, only non-token, but that number continues to grow. We see 6 targets here. This is outcome number 3. And then outcome number 4 was just drawn there.
All right. We can pack this one in. I mean, it's going to take another 5 minutes, but
right.
John's done the hard part.
So the last outcome bounces the Mirran Besieged.
Correct.
Edgar helping out here, just pulling off these mirror. And yeah, they're going to use dice here. That represents the number of mirror. Each artifact, thanks to Urza, tapping to make the next. And he's trying to get a Psy in play, it looks like. Then he'll start doubling up on creatures. So once with all these creatures in play, if he's going for a Mirran Besieged win, that doesn't really matter here. So he's going for Psy. Tell me a bit about this.
So Psy is the easiest way to put a ton of artifacts in your graveyard for Mirran Besieged.
Sure,
you
blue
just
mana
tap
to
all
sacrifice them.
Right, so it actually produces artifacts that make it to where it's almost free to just activate Psy.
Does decking become a worry?
Well, yes, but as long as you're careful about it, it's not super difficult to just make sure you end up having, say, 7 cards left in your deck to sacrifice 14 artifacts.
Yeah, and at this point, each artifact is making mana. Combo is online here.
Right.
Currently, the needle's on Gilded Goose.
Sure.
Something that's in Edgar's deck, but not in John's. Makes sense. It's Edgar's only source of mana here. Not that you can really needle mana, but it doesn't really matter. Emery from John. Mills 4.
3 artifacts.
Yeah, I suppose counting artifacts in graveyard matters here.
Yeah, it looks like that's just what he's trying to do.
Yeah, in terms of getting artifacts in the graveyard, this is a better way than Psy.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4 blue. There's the last paradoxical outcome. Is it just going to pick up Mirran Besieged? I think it might. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can't count that fast. It's probably somewhere
15,
about 20.
I believe.
Less than 20, more than 10.
Yep.
Does he want to pick up all these?
Ooh.
There might be a way to do this. With the speed he's moving, it feels like there is a way around this that we are not noticing. We'll see if it is there. All right, Mirran Besieged back into play. Set to Phyrexian. Beginning of your end step. Draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 15 or more artifacts in your graveyard, target opponent loses the game. It's naming Phyrexian. Now we will count the artifacts. He gets to loot 1 into the graveyard. So 1, 2, that's 3, 6, 9, 10. He needs 5 more.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
You just start Pyrite spellbombing stuff.
Right, you don't even use Psy, do you? You just use like these baubles.
Yep.
They can go for free. There is no next turn to draw the card. A fun win condition here for the deck. Yeah, Pyrite Spellbomb will do it. Perhaps to Edgar for walking through this one. A lot of times you'll never actually see the ending of it.
I mean, there's certainly a point where if Edgar thinks that he is favored in games that run short, then he just is kind of interested in making John use the clock.
All right, and now says, I'm going to sacrifice all these, move to end step.
Oh, engineered explosives blows them up.
Oh, it's not needled anymore. He needled the goose.
Ha,
Okay.
ha, ha.
Clever, clever. John Cuvelier takes game 1. Things were looking pretty dire for him there. Edgar likely with the win on the untap, but the untap never came, and we saw some strength of why this combo version has a lot to offer in the mirror.
Right, and that's a lot of why doing fair things in these types of mirrors is frequently not where you want to be, because it felt like Edgar had honestly kind of gotten most of the things he wanted to do. He got to Cryptic, he had it locked up to where he was going to get to start looping Cryptics every turn. He had more on the battlefield, he had engineered explosives, he had all these things going for him, but he did not have a way to slam the door like John did.
So let's look then at the sideboards. And Edgar already feels like he has to play a control role here, and I expect him to really lean into that out of the sideboard.
I agree. So the first thing that I'm very interested in bringing in from Edgar's side is Damping Sphere. This is a card that turns off those big paradoxical outcome turns.
Right, you just can't, you can only really realistically play 4 spells in a turn with
Exactly.
a sphere, if even that.
Yeah.
Other things though, Thoughtseize, Nile, Spellbomb, Drown in the Lock. Do you like any of those?
Yeah, so I think to a point, being able to pick apart John's payoff cards is kind of where you want to be. Whenever you have these more combo-centric versions of the deck, being able to just take, say, a Mirran Besieged or an Urza is going to be much more painful than it's going to be for the decks that can function and play a fairer game like Edgar's can.
When Edgar goes this way, then what leaves his deck?
So most of what he's going to be looking to cut are just some of his different interactive pieces, and some of the things that just aren't going to play as well against specifically what his opponent is doing. Something like Aether Spellbomb is likely going to be a little bit weaker unless he just wants to have that as a whir piece.
Witching Well, perhaps?
Right.
On John's side, he is the combo version. So, though he has cards like Oko in his sideboard, I actually don't know if I like much sideboarding from him.
Right, so I imagine Oko's going to come in because it's just so good against Urza and opposing Okos at times, but for the most part, you don't really want to be messing with your own formula too much in a matchup where you're favored.
Big thanks to those of you watching us on Twitch and those of you watching us at StarCityGames.com. If you're not a subscriber already, think about joining us in the feature match area. You get to vote on the quarterfinals every weekend to access to our emoticons as well. It's twitch.tv/StarCityGames. A lot of the advantages John has, it still feels like, are just game 1 advantages. Things like he has 7 Moxes to Edgar's 4.
Right, so it's a lot of things just on the deck list.
Right.
The outcome deck is going to be doing more powerful things. It's just better at going over the top, and that's why we're going to see Edgar have to lean into this interaction to try and prevent John from doing those things.
Both players keeping here. So game 2, Edgar, with about 20 minutes, has to make up 2 games here.
It's not impossible. We have seen Oko close some doors quickly. Same with Urza.
Well, actually, I think it's interesting. You had mentioned before, Edgar, one of our top players here on the tour, he extended that combo turn game 1 much longer than it needed to. And it wasn't because Edgar didn't know how it worked. Edgar chose to use some clock up here.
Right. So there's a point where if you think it is going to take your opponent more turns or longer to win an actual game, then it actually favors you for more of the clock to get worn down.
Yeah, usually when you're about to lose a game, if it's game 1, I don't see players take that move. A lot of times I'll see that if that, let's say Edgar had won game 1 and that was game 2, that's a strategy I'll see a lot from a player. Like, okay,
Sure.
Let's make a game 3 that wins in my time frame and is difficult in my opponent's time frame. But
yes.
For Edgar to do that in game 1, and granted, this isn't a slow play thing. This is a, play was very fine there. But to do that
Right.
in game 1 is it's a bold strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of just comes down to assumptions about the matchup that Edgar has.
So we see Goose with Mox Opal here for Edgar. Engineer Explosives on 0 gives him Metalcraft. Potential for a turn 2 Urza even. It'll just be a turn 2 Emery.
That's all.
No big deal. And a Witching Well. Top cards. Thoughtseize and Cryptic Command. Probably a no to the Thoughtseize, but maybe a yes to the Cryptic.
Yeah, and there's even a case possibly for keeping both of them, depending on what he's looking for.
And this is neat. He ships both.
Okay, so I imagine what that means is he has an interactive spell in his hand, but he's looking for something to actually apply pressure, an Oko, an Urza, etc.
Back to John we go. Starts with Arkham's Astrolabe. It's a second one. Draws a Spell Bomb. His hand right now just appears to be Emery, lands, outcome, Spell Bomb. So here will be Emery. 4 cards milled. One of them was an Urza. It looks like the only artifact put there is a third Astrolabe. It's Psy Emery Urza Astrolabe. But Emery as a legend makes Mox Amber live. Casts it, and Edgar's going to Fatal Push that Psy with the Amber on the stack. No mana here. Nice play there. So Amber resolves, but with no legendary permanence, John is out of mana. And that's going to be that.
Yeah.
Good turn by Edgar. Can he capitalize? Draws a card with Astrolabe. That one's from the graveyard, thanks to Emery. And might be it. Bobble will check the top card. And he's going to pass. He has Engineer Explosives and Gilded Goose up.
Here just doing it on his own turn to up the odds that he draws something like a Metallic Rebuke for John's turn.
Yeah, especially after sideboarding, we expect Edgar's deck to be pretty heavy on interaction.
Right.
For John, Pirate Spellbomb, he shoots down Emery. Edgar has another one waiting. And did find that the card needed. There's Oko.
Oh, is that another Emery hiding out in his hand?
It is, yeah. He started with 2.
Wow, wow, wow.
So here's Oko. John says, yeah, that's going to happen. It's time to elk something. Looks like it's only he put it to 5 loyalty. There we go. Make it. You can't.
Changed his mind.
You can't go to 7.
Right.
Not right away. So makes a food token. Makes an Emery. Mills 4 more. Last card is Bobble. And Edgar's going to pass. He's basically just an Urza away from having everything.
Yeah, he's just saying, this is your turn. Make the most of it.
And this puts us again where we saw game 1, where it feels like the way Edgar's built his deck is that his development is better.
Right.
Cards like Gilded Goose have been very strong here. So John was in the spot very similarly last game, and then suddenly just comboed.
Yes.
And can he do it again? His hand right now is a Paradoxical Outcome and 4 lands. Not the best way to start. Looks like he's going to take advantage of Edgar being tapped down and just fire off that Paradoxical Outcome.
Yeah, his hand hasn't really got very much going on, and you just need to actually do something, and so this is going to up the odds that he actually has anything to do next turn.
Just to draw 3?
Yep.
Could do worse. Targets all 3. Picks them up. Draws Spell Bomb, Fatal Push, Mox Opal. And I'll be interested to hear whether he replays any of those Mox in because there's an Engineered Explosives on Edgar's board.
Right, there's an Engineered Explosives and there's an Oko, and if you don't want those to get elked, then that can be rough.
As he plays the Amber but not the Opal and then passes. That feels like a good way to split the difference.
Exactly, and this kind of just says, go ahead, make my Amber, make it a Mox Antler.
Yeah.
Hey! But that kind of signals that he doesn't have a legendary creature or a planeswalker to enable it in his hand.
And Whereas John draws cards in 6s, Edgar does them in 1s, but he continues to go to work. Here's the Astrolabe.
Several 1s do add up to a 6 eventually. That's a math fact.
There we go.
You can write that one down.
Enough 1s will get you most places.
There you go.
So, Astrolabe turns into an elk. It attacks in.
For a card that's initials are AA, it's really hard to make an antler joke out of Arkham's
It's an
Astrolabe.
elk.
I'm impressed.
Boom. Boom.
That is
not hard at all. Emery from John. That enables Mox Amber. There is an explosives on 0 hiding out. So the time to do this, Edgar's waiting for a paradoxical outcome to be on the stack.
Right. You generally want to try and make it to where John has to overextend into the EE before you pop it.
Another Astrolabe from John. Willing to commit those into the board. And
All
he's
right.
now hit one of his sideboard Okos.
That plays.
Soon everything will be an elk.
What's your favorite
Great.
tap land? Is it Blossoming Sands or Elkheim Palace?
Ooh, I like that one. Wait, you can't... Okay. I say you can't turn it into an elk.
Well, not with that attitude.
It might be Alchemist's Refuge.
Oh. I think we need to go out and get coconuts to do the Monty Python clopping thing.
Oh, they're
Whenever
coming.
something gets elked, we can just have some
It would
straight up
just be
Magic Arena sounds.
It just would be constantly going. So now, John will make his own Astrolabe into an elk.
Do you elk your Astrolabe, sir?
All right, Assassin's Trophy takes care of John's Oko. Does he have more basics? Oh, he has more islands. Yes, 2
So many
left.
snow-covered basics. He might actually be out since he's been milling so much.
He has 1 more island in his deck. If it's not in the graveyard, then he has it. But otherwise, he might be out. I think you're right.
Yeah, he has like 70 cards in his graveyard. Give or take.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Hey, there it is.
The good news is that most of the Prismatic Vistas are in the graveyard too. So
Yeah, we
At least
saw
there's
him
that.
thumb through before he played his turn, and that's probably what he was checking for. Am I about to play a land and pay a life to shuffle my library?
go back to Edgar.
Oh, how do you feel about stealing an Emery with Oko?
This Oko card continues to be nice.
Oh.
Edgar will grab an Emery.
Oh, and this is actually a pretty interesting dynamic. Since Edgar gave away a Mox Opal while John already had one, John only gets to keep one, and normally you would want to keep your opponent's, so Edgar couldn't recur it with, say, an Emery that he just
Right.
stole. But because of paradoxical outcome, you actually want to keep your own copy of the card.
Now Edgar back to being someone controlling an Emery. But still no one has too huge of an advantage. We see Pirate Spellbomb in John's hand. That can get his own Emery back to the graveyard. And it will. Actually, it's going to go for the Oko.
That's just so much harder to deal with than an Emery, that even if the Emery is recurring things, they're both providing an advantage every turn, but Emery's is less substantial, at least on the short term.
I like that the recurrent artifact in the graveyard every turn is the less substantial of the options.
That's a weird thing to like.
Yeah.
The fact is, it's just in this version of Urza that Edgar's playing, a lot of the artifacts tend to just be air.
Right.
So that's not to say that Emery's ineffective. Uh-oh.
Mystic Sanctuary from Edgar, putting Cryptic Command back on top. Okay, this is one of the end games.
The door's starting to close.
This is the control end game from Edgar. Urza, the play from Edgar. And this is interesting. I want to keep an eye on the clock here because Edgar is starting to become the favorite here. Whether John kind of has two options. He can either pick up his cards now or try to win this game. Because a second draw for John is a pretty bad outcome.
Sure, but Edgar does actually have to win this game.
Right, so for John, he either needs to contest this game or he has to kind of right now decide whether he's going to contest game 2.
Exactly, or have a pretty reasonable risk of drawing game 3.
Yeah, if he tries to stay alive in game 2 and fails, then he's going to draw.
Exactly. Oh, is that a paradoxical outcome on top?
Believe so.
Well, that's
Makes
one of the better ones you can draw. We know Edgar's Bauble is going to be drawing this Cryptic Command, though.
Right, and now that Urza's in play, yeah, I don't think John can win it.
Yeah,
even
this is tough.
Because Edgar can set up a lock where he sanctuaries the Cryptic every turn and pops the Bauble to draw it on John's turn.
Right.
It's a pretty elaborate setup, but it does work.
It's one where it's just kind of free to play all of these good cards together. Those are what a lot of the best combos end up looking like, where rather than having to play some anemic thing like a Deceiver Exarch, for example, instead you get to play...
I think, there aren't really bad cards involved in this.
Exactly. It's almost like, oh, my combo piece is a Kitchen Finks.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And it looks like end step, there's just going to be more food tokens. And now is John he could outcome here. And he will. So John has chosen to contest game 2.
Right. It looks like this is the moment where he may even be using this to kind of decide, is it even worth it?
Yeah, uses Opal, 3 targets for it. But this is all likely on John's own end step. Edgar gets the food and says, go, draws Cryptic Command.
What is the size of this construct? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I don't like this line from
7.
John because I don't think he can survive this game.
Right. If Edgar can just put a couple of more artifacts onto the battlefield, the power of his creatures is lethal with this Cryptic Command.
Right.
You just tap the 3/3 and smush.
Right, Cryptic Command.
Right.
Get rid of it. And Edgar's doing the same math. We see 5, 6 artifacts, so it's a 6/6 plus the Elk. So we're already up to 9. And 4 mana from the artifacts for Edgar. Cryptic. Bounce draw.
Tap draw. So this is playing around some sort of spell that could let John pick it back up, like another paradoxical outcome.
Sure. Which would then also counter the Cryptic.
I guess that wouldn't even matter, though, if the Astrolabe got picked up.
Oko from Edgar. Okay, that's 3 more power.
You know, if you just take the O off of Oko, it's KO.
Yeah, that works. That's what's about to happen here. So 6 from Elks. He still seems like he's 1 short.
Urza.
Oh, no, wait. Urza's the one. There we go. 3, 6, 7, 13. And this is, I think, the outcome that was the worst one for John, is that he does lose game 2, but most of the clock also gets lost in the process.
Right, only has 4 minutes left.
Yeah. Question is whether either player can win here. I suppose, who actually thinks better in a short game?
That's a tough one. I imagine it actually is John.
Because his games are long, but it's in 1 turn.
Exactly. The long part of John's game is the fact that his last turn takes 10 minutes, not that he's actually doing that many things or having to take that many turns, like something akin to Nexus of Fate.
Yeah, it feels like the difference is that Edgar, a draw's okay for Edgar at this point, but a draw for John is pretty bad.
That's substantial.
Yeah. Both players know the timing on this one. You see pretty quick shuffles. We'll put John on the play. You're going to see the players both go pretty quick to see how many turns they can get in.
At least 5.
Before the clock hits, before they hit the end of round.
Cuts are fast.
John's side. I like this hand from John. Multiple zeros and a paradoxical outcome. It only has 1 land, which is scary, but I think you keep it.
Yeah, I think this is one where you're looking to win a fast game, and this hand is a land or 2 away from winning a fast game.
John had some options there. He has a Thoughtseize and an Astrolabe in hand. Decides to fetch for the snow-covered island instead of the watery grave.
Right. This way, the thought is you can just cast the Thoughtseize next turn if necessary.
Astrolabe draws a card, and that draws Steam Vents. Not too bad. He'll get a bauble and another bauble. Does he check any cards? He'll pop 1 to check Edgar's top card. Looks like the other one's going to hang around. And draws Mox Amber. I love this start from John. This is what he needs.
This is what a win
Looks
this
like.
fast. Exactly. This is how it happens. If he can find a Mox Opal off the top, he just gets to jam a turn 2 Oko on the play.
Yep.
He may even be incentivized to go ahead and crack this bauble since he has a Mox Amber in his hand. He'll still be able to hit Metalcraft.
Top card of his deck is an Oko, Edgar just saw. Thoughtseize. I don't think he's going to take the Oko because he knows one's coming.
And this is a strong hand.
It is really good. It plays a good early game and late game. I'm interested to see what Edgar picks here. You know, maybe you pick Paradoxical Outcome. That's a pretty safe play, especially because there's Oko and another Oko on top of the deck. But looks like Edgar's going to try to win this as well. He takes the Thoughtseize.
Right, and that's Edgar saying, I don't want to draw, I want to win.
Yeah, I like it. No real play this turn from John. Tap Steam Vents and a pass. Holding on to Mox Amber in case he finds something like a Mirran Besieged or a Saheeli. Does pop Bobble, wants to make sure he hits the land drop.
Does it on Edgar's turn to hide the card from a potential Thoughtseize.
Good.
Oh.
And 2 bricks, no land for John.
Oh, geez.
Was 2 fatal
pushes on top of that.
Pass. All right, opportunity for Edgar. 40 seconds remaining in the round. Land 3 for Edgar.
Imagine we're going to see a slammed Oko here.
Yeah, and I think it just maybe the pace didn't really seem to pick up. It seems like Edgar's kind of going to coast this one in. We do see an Oko. The Edgar will be turn 0.
And something that's actually different from Britarione's version of the deck is I don't see any sort of infinite combo in Edgar's.
No.
So it looks like at this point Edgar is just playing for the draw.
Yeah, land 4. Yeah, he doesn't have any Thopter Sword in here.
Right.
Correct. He can make Urza this turn and perhaps get within range of a giant attack. This is turn 2, so it has to be Urza this turn so he gets a construct.
Right, so it would be Urza into somehow make 17 artifacts or something.
Yeah, maybe something along the lines of this turn of Urza, make a construct, tap the construct, cast Emery, play a 0, tap that, cast something.
Sure.
And then, like, next turn, play a lot of artifacts.
Sure.
Even then, I'm not sure that's enough. It does make it more interesting. So here's the Urza.
Maybe if he has a bunch of 0-drop artifacts into another Urza.
Yep. Elks the food token and swings, and he has to elk it here. He needs the damage.
Okay.
If he had an Emery, he must not, because he would have been able to cast it there. He would have done that before elking the food token. But John's going to Fatal Push down the 3/3.
All right, well.
Turn 3 is John's. He can't win here.
Well.
Well, maybe. Okay, he has one more turn.
Saheeli. So theoretically, that could turn into something here.
Right, John actually doesn't, he can win on turn 5. He doesn't need to use the attack step.
Right, so this Saheeli is going to make it that Mox Hammer is turned on, and then you can filter it into black with Astrolabe to cast the other Fatal Push hiding out in his hand, which will also make a blocker token, what have you. So it's possible that we see John sneak this one out. He's going to need some very specific cards off the top, but he's not dead.
Let's see if he does it. Hand is 2 Okos, Fatal Push, Paradoxical Outcome. And he has Cracked a Fetch Land, so Revolt is enabled. So 3 mana for Saheeli. Amber online. You think you push down the Urza here?
Either that or the token. I guess you did just fetch, so if you want to hit the Urza, you have to do it now.
Yeah, takes care of Urza. And it's a pass. Edgar's last turn. Don't believe he can deal 18.
All right, Edgar, impress us.
Likely just playing defense. Certainly if Edgar has something like a Cryptic Command, I don't think John can do it.
I agree. It looks like there's an Assassin's Trophy as well.
It's going to be Emery after the attack. Top 4 cards into the graveyard. And there is a Cryptic in Edgar's hand, so that should be too much. Draw there was Urza from John.
Oh my gosh, it's actually the card he needed to draw to maybe do something from here as well.
Yeah, he could cast Urza, make the construct, use the
that's
4
so
mana
brutal.
to Paradoxical Outcome. Oh, he's one short actually on the outcome. Right, even if this works, I don't think.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, he just
So
has
he has to tap the Amber. Right.
And Edgar's going to counter anyway. That should do it. Played to a standstill here in round number 7 between Edgar Magalhaes and John Cuvelier. And for me, that feels like this ended up a better result for Edgar. This is a matchup that was likely difficult for him. Record-wise, a draw is a lot more playable for him. Show in hand, he has some Drown in the Lock and Assassin's Trophy, but there's still a lot of game to be played on both sides.
Right.
So that will be the end of that match here.